So if there are folks who are unable to make it tonight, we invite you to share the video with them once it is live. Merritt, could you please check the waiting room from, oh, actually, you're not a co-host. Never mind, let me make you a co-host. And then could you check the waiting room from time to time to make sure we don't have anyone hanging out there? Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay.
Can I just ask one more question of Aimee instead of texting her? When would you like me to put the thing that you'd like in the chat? I've got it ready to go.
You can wait till the end. There's
Okay.
a slide at the end. How can you help? And that's the perfect time.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so welcome. Welcome to the second of our 2025 Winter Speakers Series. This is a almost annual event that we started about 5 years ago, and we've been really excited by how many people are interested in just spending an hour on a Wednesday evening learning more about fisheries in the Mid-Columbia region and the work that Mid-Columbia Fisheries and our partners are doing to improve habitat. I'm Rebecca Wassel. I'm the Yakima Basin Program Director for Mid-Columbia Fisheries. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting and restoring wild salmonid populations. We're part of a statewide network of regional fisheries enhancement groups, and we really encourage folks, if you're not in the Mid-Columbia region, take a look and see which regional fisheries enhancement group might be near you and go out and plant some trees with them. I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. We will take questions after the presentation, but if you think of something fantastic and you don't want to lose it, please put it in the chat, and then I will facilitate questions and answers after both Aimee and Josh have finished their presentations. We're going to try and keep folks muted if they're not the presenter during the presentations. And then during the question time, we'll unmute so that we can all have a conversation. If you've called in on a phone, please make sure that your phone is muted as well. If you want to see Josh and Aimee's faces and presentations larger, you could change your view to who's talking, which makes them big instead of seeing the whole gallery of folks. And I think with that, I get to introduce Aimee and Josh, who will be talking with us today about water for people and fish, protecting bull trout in Yakima Basin reservoirs. So Josh Rogala is a fish biologist for Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife in the Habitat Program. I've enjoyed working with him for quite a long time now on a variety of projects, and I always really appreciate the expertise and perspective and calm demeanor that Josh brings to a project. He has a great ability to make sure people are thinking about the full range of options, and he's also extremely accessible to landowners, which is key when we're working on these projects that can have a fair amount of complexity. He covers the Yakima River Basin for fish screens, fish passage, and drought mitigation agencies for WDFW, and has worked across the state of Washington conducting studies on freshwater systems for the management and recovery of native fish. He provides technical assistance and design recommendations for fish screening and fish passage projects, and works with local partner agencies on bull trout recovery, which is why we're here today. The work that he does there includes trying to facilitate fish passage into the tributaries that are affected by the Bureau of Reclamation reservoir operations, which means that in our drought years, Josh is the one pulling together all the straw bales and all the people to try and build temporary passage into Box Canyon Creek. Reservoir operations combined with drought conditions cause fish passage issues, and that often can interrupt migration and spawning. So Josh's work implements fish passage fixes to let bull trout move at the right time up for spawning into the streams. Well, Aimee Tayler is here from Mid-Columbia Fisheries. She is our bull trout and field biologist. I think her title is longer than fits on her business card. What I really enjoy about working with Aimee is that she first worked with us as a bull trout task force team member in 2019, I believe.
Yeah.
And she had just come from doing a lot of field work in California, like a lot of hands-on fish work, which was very valuable for us that summer. And I learned a lot from her, and then was thrilled when she went off, finished a master's degree, and came back to work with us again to lead our bull trout work and our bull trout task force. She's led the bull trout work for 4 seasons, and she's also facilitating the Yakima Basin Bull Trout Working Group. She has a bachelor's degree in wildlife, fish, and conservation biology from University of California at Davis, and a master's from Central Washington University. And so this is now her 11th year of working on native fish recovery, and we are all really lucky to have her. So with that, I think, Aimee, are you going first?
I'm gonna go first.
Okay, so Aimee will present first, and then Josh, and then questions. I guess before you completely I turn it to you, please put in the chat if you're having any technical problems at this point. Okay, I think we're good. Take it away, Aimee.
Thank you so much, Becca. That was a great introduction. I just want to ask and make sure everybody can see my screen sort of in the presentation format. Perfect. Okay, so our talk today is about water for people and fish and protecting bull trout in Yakima Basin reservoirs. So I'm really excited to have invited Josh to do this talk with me because Josh is like one of my favorite, most people I get to encounter out in the field because he's always so cheerful and helpful. And one time I walked all the way down this empty Gold Creek reservoir and I was going to have to walk all the way back up because my truck was parked way above that bridge up there. But then I saw Josh's truck and I was like, Josh, can I get a ride? And he let me hop in and he took me back to my truck. And that was a really fun memory. So anyways, all right, I'm going to jump straight into it. So the importance of water. Most of us, I think in this presentation live in the Yakima Basin, but maybe not all of us. So I wanted to give a quick intro about the importance of water here. And that starts with talking about the 400,000 people that live here in the Yakima Basin. Of course, we all rely on water for drinking, for use in our homes. We also have a $4.5 billion agriculture industry. So if you look at the map on the right-hand side of the screen, all of the bright green you're seeing on the map is irrigated agriculture. So that takes a lot of water, and the majority of our water comes from our snowpack and springs in the ground, but the majority of it falls in the mountains and then drains down through the Yakima River drainage. So in our basin, we also produce 75% of the nation's hops. And as you know, hops make beer. The world loves beer. So not only in our nation do we produce tons of hops, but we send hops out across the world. We also produce apples, pears, cherries, peaches, hay, you name it. We probably grow it here in the Yakima Basin. And we also have a huge beef cattle and dairy industry. So all of these things take up a lot of water. And then, of course, the fish. I think we're all here because we're somewhat interested in fish. And so we have salmon, steelhead, lamprey, bull trout, and many other native fishes that really need water for their day-to-day survival. So with that introduction into why water is important to us, I'm going to give some fun facts about bull trout. This is an awesome photo taken by a retired fish biologist from WDFW, Eric Anderson. And we get to see beautiful bull trout like this in some of our field work adventures. So their Latin name is Salvelinus confluentis. They are part of the char genus, so they're related to Arctic char, Dolly Varden, eastern brook trout, and lake trout, which we also have in the basin, brook trout and lake trout and bull trout. These fish spawn and rear in very cold waters, so they're one of the most sensitive salmonid species when it comes to habitat requirements. They need that really cold, clean, and connected and complex habitat. We call it the 4Cs. Bull trout are a long-lived repeat spawner, so unlike salmon, which are the cousin to bull trout, they don't die after they spawn. They can spawn multiple times in their life, and they can, if they were to die of old age, they can live, 12 to 15 years. So they can be a very long-lived fish and spawn many, many times throughout their life. These fish have diverse migratory life histories. So some of them can be stream residents where they live in a small river or stream their whole life. These fish only get about 12 inches long. They stay very small. But then these fish can also be extremely migratory and travel hundreds of miles within a river system, or even some of them go out to the ocean and come back to freshwater to spawn like a salmon would. Many of the bull trout we have in the Yakima Basin live a lake-dwelling life history where they primarily live in a lake or a reservoir and utilize tributaries for spawning, and those are called adfluvial fish. The bull trout is an apex predator of the aquatic ecosystem. So as a baby, as a juvenile fish, they prey on aquatic insects, macroinvertebrates, kind of like many of the other trout we know. But as they get older, they prey on other fish. And they're in a very important part of the ecosystem, being a predator. Bull trout were once treated as a trash fish. They were a species that was known to be predatory. Some of the early advice from agencies was to kind of take the bull trout out because they're preying on salmon and trout and other game fish species that we want to catch and protect. But quickly we realized that bull trout were not necessarily the problem and the reason for declining salmon populations. But unfortunately, they were already to a point where not just from, being over harvested, but many other threats and situations have put them in a position where they're now listed as threatened on the Endangered Species Act. So they were listed in 1998 and they're still threatened today. The good news is bull trout are highly charismatic. They're a very cool looking fish. They can get very big. People are starting to get really excited about bull trout and bull trout recovery. So I think that we're in a good place when it comes to the energy needed to get bull trout on the radar and up in the public perception. And that's kind of evident by all of you guys joining us for this talk today. So yeah, thanks for coming and learning more about bull trout. So I'm just going to go a little bit over what bull trout, what we have for bull trout in the Yakima Basin. There were originally 13 designated populations, and you can see on this map, kind of in the center is Yakima. The more north you go, you kind of go up past Ellensburg, and you can see these 4 stars in the upper part of the map, and all of these stars in the sort of southwestern part of the map. All of these stars represent one bull trout population that is genetically distinct from one another. Unfortunately, 2 of these populations are now extirpated. Tanaway no longer has bull trout, and the upper Cle Elum also no longer has bull trout. So these populations they're locally extinct, and we do have 5 more populations that are at extreme low abundance. So kind of on the edge of blinking out, but we are doing our best to prevent that from happening with all the many projects we have going on, and we're hopeful that we can keep any more from going away anytime soon. 7 of our existing bull trout populations are above Bureau of Reclamation dams. So that's kind of where this talk comes into play about how bull trout are interacting with reservoir environments and what we can do to help protect them as we go forward in time. So what are some of the threats that reservoir dwelling bull trout face? And this one might be obvious, but dams act as a fish passage barrier. So like I said before, bull trout can be highly migratory, move long distances between their overwintering grounds and their spawning grounds. And so when all these dams were built in the early 1900s, historical habitat was fragmented and bull trout were no longer able to reach some of the habitat that they could get to before, or they became isolated on the upstream side of the dam. So they can no longer move downstream and mingle with other bull trout in other areas. One of the other threats is that bull trout can get kind of sucked through the dam, through the outlet works, and end up on the other side. Of course, at that point, it's a passage barrier they can't get back through. So that's called entrainment. This picture you're looking at is from the downstream side of Ketchulus Dam. So bull trout have been known to come through here and get trapped down here. And so what you're seeing is kind of the setup of a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service trap and haul, where they attempt to catch bull trout. They take some biological samples and then will move the fish back over the dam so they can access their spawning grounds. And unfortunately, one of the issues with entrainment is that the fish can become injured or experience mortality. This fish was caught in a trap and haul event, and it has this little sore on its tail, and we think that's probably from it attempting to go back up through this concrete channel. You can see up here, and kind of ending up rubbing its tail on the side of the concrete for too much time, unfortunately. Another threat that bull trout face in reservoirs, especially in drought years, is that the drawdowns affect lake habitat. So some of the reservoirs in the Yakima Basin were natural lakes to begin with. Cle Cochise, Ketchulus, Bumping Lake, they were all natural lakes to begin with. So they have sort of a deeper structure to them compared to like Rimrock Reservoir, for example, which was not a lake. It was just the Tieton River Valley that was then inundated. So when the lake gets drawn down or the reservoir gets drawn down, what ends up happening is you lose a lot of this really good edge habitat, which is warm and productive and grows lots of good, yummy bugs and zooplankton. And so that can affect the food web from the bugs and the zooplankton, which then feed the kokanee salmon and the cutthroat trout and other small fishes, which are then the food for the bull trout. So the whole food web can be affected during these deep drawdowns, as well as just kind of a shrinking of overall habitat availability in the lake. Another thing is that spawning tributaries, because the mouth of the spawning tributary is flowing into an area that the water level changes quite frequently, there can be a lot of sedimentation, and the alluvial fan can actually kind of pile up sediment so that in dry years, the river will actually become disconnected. And so that can prevent fish passage to spawning areas. So Josh is going to talk a lot more about that later, but I figured I would introduce it right now. We also have recreational impacts to bull trout, specifically people driving vehicles through stream beds when the reservoir is low. Here you can see tire tracks through Indian Creek and Rimrock Reservoir. We also have, situations where people are out playing in the reservoir bed and they build these recreational rock dams across some migratory corridors. So there's definitely, one might not be a big issue unless it's a big one like this where fish definitely can't pass. But when multiple people are doing this in multiple different places, the issues can compound and become pretty serious. So that's part of our job with the Bull Trout Task Force, is to educate folks on this and take these passage barriers out. And then on top of all of that, drought exacerbates all these threats, right? So this is a photo of Cochise Reservoir from the end of 2023. You can see that there's this very narrow section of stream coming through the reservoir from this upper northern side, Little Cochise, and down here to Big Cochise. And one of the issues is that both of the spawning tributaries that bull trout use in Cochise are up here on this north side. So bull trout that utilize this part of the lake, the south side, during other parts of the year can become isolated if they don't get to the north side in time. This section of river can become very warm, which isn't the most preferable for a bull trout trying to find its way to the spawning tributary. Over here on the left, you can see what we call the teacup diagram. It's a Bureau of Reclamation graphic that's consistently updated, so you can see kind of where our storage levels are at in the Yakima River Basin. And this diagram was from October 17th, which is right around the lowest of the low for this year. And you can see we're pretty much empty. We really don't have a lot of water left this year, and that can definitely place impacts on bull trout in the system. And just wanted to bring your attention here to Rimrock Reservoir on the bottom of the screen. As I mentioned before, Rimrock was not a natural lake, so this river valley, when you really drain it that low, it becomes essentially a puddle that that fish are, concentrated in and trying to survive this kind of impact. And so the other reservoirs, there's an adequate depth refuge that fish can get down, and there's the vertical habitat, but in Rimrock Lake, that's just not the case. So, what are some things that we're doing to protect bull trout in our reservoirs? There is a huge interagency collaboration of projects going on. First of all, we have the Bureau of Reclamation, who has committed to trying their best to reduce impacts to bull trout through their operations, and they work closely with the Yakima Nation, providing Yakima Nation direct funding for some of their bull trout programs. Bull trout also gets a lot of funding through the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan, which is sort of this collaboration, this long-term plan that is designed to increase the resiliency of water resources, of fish and wildlife, working lands, improve infrastructure. It's a really great, amazing plan that we have to kind of protect water for fish and people in the face of climate change and for the long term. So luckily we have the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan funding a lot of our projects. Of course, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is committed to recovery of endangered species. And not only does their office here in the Yakima Basin directly work on endangered species recovery, but they also provide funding for our bull trout work from time to time. And of course, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife is neck deep in it as well. You'll hear more from Josh about what they're doing. So some of the projects, there's going to be a new fish ladder going in at Clear Creek Dam. So this picture is from below Clear Creek Dam. You can see a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service employee holding a nice big bull trout. There is a fish ladder at Clear Creek Dam. It was constructed when the dam was built. Unfortunately, it's not highly suitable for bull trout, as the water for the fish ladder gets pulled from the surface of the lake above, and in the summer season, it's actually too warm. So bull trout are not attracted to that fish ladder. They end up attracted to the base of the dam where the cold water is coming out from deeper down. And so a new fish ladder is going in with a cold water intake pipe, and construction is going to start on that this year, which is really exciting. Again, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does a trap and haul program in the meantime, until there is fish passage at many of the dams where bull trout reside. In the meantime, they're kind of going out, collecting, trapping as many bull trout as they can that have been entrained through the dam, and then they will move them back over the dam so they can access their spawning grounds. Sometimes we have to do recreation closures to protect bull trout. For example, the last 2 seasons, Petrolus Reservoir has been closed because unfortunately people have been neglecting the rules and driving in the reservoir bed and crossing over Gold Creek. So we've had to place some recreational closures, which is really unfortunate for the people who do utilize this and care about the resource. Unfortunately, a few bad apples kind of ruin it for everyone else. So we don't like to do this, but sometimes we have to protect. Gold Creek fish are one of those populations that's kind of on the brink of blinking out. So we have to do what we can to protect them. The Yakima Nation is spearheading this really cool, interesting project where um, we are rescuing juvenile bull trout and bull trout fry from rivers that are drying up during the summertime. When we get a low snowpack, sometimes this drying can occur earlier in the season and for more extended periods. And so my crew, the Bull Trout Task Force, WDFW, and the Yakima Nation, we all get together. We go rescue these baby bull trout that are in danger of getting stranded and drying up. And then the Yakima Nation will take them back to a rearing facility and feed them a whole bunch of food. They're really fat and happy, and then they get released back into the reservoir where they would have naturally migrated to. So I think this project has been going on for about 6 or 7 years now, and um, we're really interested to see if some of these fish start to come back and spawn soon as adults. They do take a while to reach sexual maturity, so that's something that we're interested in learning more about. We have the Bull Trout Task Force, which is the team that I am so fortunate to get to lead every summer, and we hire a crew of seasonal technicians that pretty much assist on all the bull trout projects we have going on in the Yakima Basin. We are like the boots on the ground that help everyone else with their bull trout work. So here you can see my crew getting ready for a snorkel survey. We have to wear dry suits because the water is very, very cold, and it's a super fun field season. So we love getting to work with all of our partners. And then, of course, we have WDFW doing their passage monitoring and implementing emergency measures if necessary. So what I'm going to do now is stop sharing my screen and pass it over to Josh to let him tell you more about that.
Get my screen shared here. Thank you, Aimee. That was a great presentation. Appreciate you touching on some of the stuff that I want to be talking about, and I'm going to go into just a little bit more detail on my little piece that I help out with. First of all, again, this is just one part of bull trout recovery, bull trout protection in the Yakima Basin. There's a huge group of people, all the partners that help out, and again, just my little part in helping out here. So I want to start also by thanking the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation for funding this work. Without them, these fish would just be that much closer to extinction. So let's carry on here. Come on. All right, so here's a different map of the Yakima River Basin. Here's showing that the yellow stars representing the 7 monitored streams. These are all critical spawning tributaries for these adfluvial bull trout or bull trout that like to grow big in the lake and go back up into the streams to spawn. WFW has been doing this monitoring since 2015. The monitoring consists of going to each of these 7 sites every week, every 5 to 7 days, or as needed, and documenting and fixing fish passage issues as they occur. Drought and water storage issues play a huge role in the timing, duration, and extent of these stream dewatering situations, as well as degradation of fish passage. The field work is pretty basic. These reservoirs are drawn for agriculture and municipal use throughout the year. Thousands of CFS per day are spilled out, so these conditions change very dramatically, and I'll show some more detail about that later. But the monitoring consists of looking for fish passage issues. We look for a minimum of 6 inches of water depth, and along with other features to ensure these fish can get upstream and spawn when they're ready to. Aimee already showed a small example of the teacup diagram, and we use this to track the reservoir levels in the Yakima Basin. The picture on the left here is showing what we're typically seeing at the beginning of the year. And just to note that in 2024, we were in a drought and the reservoirs never filled up all the way. So we were already starting in a water deficit with the snow drought, as well as lackluster reservoir storage. On the right, you can see in October, by the time we're done, that it just dribbles in the cup. There's hardly any water left at all. So why is that important? Well, right when we're drawing all that water down is right when all these fish are trying to migrate up to their tributaries to spawn. So that timing also is the driest part of the year for Eastern Washington. and creates the biggest bottleneck for these fish to get to where they're trying to go. So I'm going to talk about a few of the issues that we see with this, and then go into how we kind of fix it. So this slide is kind of showing channel braiding. Generally speaking, biologists love channel braiding. It brings channel complexity, different habitat types, slower water, faster water, all sorts of things that juvenile fish and adult fish and salmon love. However, because of the modifications of the reservoir, clearing all the trees and the deposition of lakebed sediments, this meander through the river really reduces the amount of flow and ability for fish to swim upstream. Because of the unconsolidated lakebed sediments, a lot of the water will actually go subsurface, which isn't really helpful for fish that are trying to swim. So you can see pictures here looking downstream towards Rimrock Reservoir, and then another one looking upstream from Catchless. You just see the branching, and all these little side channels and spurs that are on here have the potential to trap fish and cause mortality, or best case scenario, delay in migration. Another issue, minimum stream flows. And as I said earlier, this stuff happens very quickly. In a matter of 1 week in Cochise River, we have decent fish passage, fully watered up, looks great. The next week, bone dry. Nothing there. You maybe find some bird poop and some otter tracks and bird tracks and stuff, but nothing else. It just turns into a lunar landscape. Not really good for fish passage. Again, low water depths and high water temperatures. When the water gets low, there's no more in-stream cover. All the trees have been chopped down, so the water gets really warm and really low. It might be kind of hard to see here, but this is really shallow flow, and the next picture will show some of the depths that we see. This riffle, I measured across here. It looks like maybe there's enough water, but you're looking at no more than 2/10 of a foot of water, when really we're looking at a minimum of a half foot of water for minimum passage depth for bull trout. They're able to swim up through some shallow areas, but they cannot do that for a prolonged period. That just also increases the risk for predation. As Aimee mentioned earlier too, we have recreational impacts. People playing in the streams, building rock dams, or bridges with logs, sticks, whatever. That's all great, but if you're out there doing that stuff, just take it down when you're done. Leave no trace, put it back how you found it, or better. So these kind of things can completely block fish passage in these streams. And you can see how narrow some of these spots are, where you have maybe a 5-foot wide section of stream and it's completely blocked off for them. While we're focused on bull trout for this, there are other migratory species such as kokanee and our numerous resident fish species that all depend on moving up and downstream to make a living. Here's another one. Aimee touched on this as well, the illegal off-roading. On top of these tire tracks of people potentially driving over fish actively trying to spawn, this also causes the streams to lose their bank stability and can cause the water to fan out over a wider area. So spots where we might have had 6 inches of water and okay passage is now 1 inch of water over 20-foot wide, and not really helpful. It's pretty extensive, and this next picture will give you a little bit of a better image of how impactful the vehicles in the reservoir can be. On top of it, risking fish directly and destabilizing the bank, the tire tracks, it's unsightly out there to see people driving through and tearing it up, and it also destroys some of the fish passage fixes that we build to try to maintain fish passage throughout the season. So I can myself and my team spend a whole day stacking rocks and trying to fix stuff, and then somebody goes out and doing some donuts in the middle of Gold Creek, and that whole day's worth of work is ruined, and we have to go back and do it again, and it usually additional fixes. Another impact to the low water and everything is an increased predation. As the fish are in the reservoir beds trying to migrate, there's no cover, there's no places for them to hide. The water's not deep enough, so it makes them more susceptible to birds and otters and raccoons and anything else that wants to eat a fish. You can see there's two different fish I found in Deep Creek. I must have scared an otter right off of them because there's otter scat and footprints all around it, and these eyes are still pretty bright on there. So I interrupted their breakfast, and otters got to eat too, but there's not very many bull trout left. So try to get them to pick something else different from the menu. Again, the impacts of warm water. Here on the top, you see two pictures of pre-spawn mortality. So these fish are lived 3 or 4 years, survived all sorts of stuff, and then they come up and the water's too warm and they die before they ever get a chance to spawn. And then this picture here on the right, you got a garter snake eating a sculpin in a dried up portion of Cochise River. When there's no water, the fish don't stand a chance. So huge increase again to pre-spawn mortality and increased risk of predation. So how do we fix these issues? And I'm going to come back to this one for a second. My arrow on there just showing sheet flows. You're looking at 1/2 inch to maybe 1 inch of water over a 50-foot berm with a 2 or 3 foot drop on the other side of it. So there's just no way for any fish to swim upstream and likely not downstream. So what are some of the things we do? As Aimee mentioned, the fish rescue. The Yakima Nation has a great program for their rescue, rear, and release. We go out as we see it. My team in particular, we're focused on the streams as they cross the reservoir bed. So we're looking for isolated side channels, pools, and other situations that will trap fish. We'll collect those fish and move them to sections of the stream that maintain water. We're pretty familiar with these systems. We have a good idea of where these spots are, and we tend to stick them there. I want to point out this picture, this little pool here in Cochise River, and this is I think from 2019, the Bull Trout Task Force. In a matter of about an hour, we pulled over 64 juvenile bull trout just out of this one little pool. And here, the picture on the right is us releasing them way upstream. You can see the happy little guys that get another chance to fight for the next day. Here's some more cool, because they're cool. Here's some pictures of some of the fish we rescue. While we're focused on bull trout that you can see on the top here, we also rescue any resident fish. So here we got a whitefish, and I'm pretty sure that's a kokanee fry there, but somebody else can correct me if they want. Going back to this, here's some of the small fixes we do. We build these rock barbs and channel training features by hand, using hand tools, or literally just picking up the rocks and moving them. And we do this intermittently over the summer to try to reduce the impact and maintain good fish passage. In this picture on the left, you can see a channel. This channel over here dead ends. It just stops, and it's not very deep. So slowly over a few weeks, we block that off to send more of that water down the main channel where it's needed to maintain fish passage. When we're shutting these off, we also conduct fish rescue. And when we completely block one off, we'll do more extensive fish rescue to go down and make sure that we're not trapping any fish that get stuck in any of these side channels. Here you can see another example, shutting off a small side channel. It actually ends just right there. So any fish that would have been in there by the next week, they'd be bird food. Here's a medium-sized fix. I showed you a picture at the beginning where had sheet flow of minimal water and a drop off this lip here. So we built a 50-foot long rock feature, a channel barb, and consolidated water over here so that we actually ended up getting almost a foot of water depth in a 5 to 6 foot section that allowed for fish passage. Quite a bit of work to get that built all by hand, stacking rocks. And as Field of Dreams said, build it and they will come. As soon as we start removing these rock dams and Bull Trout Task Force removing them, the fish start moving. They respond immediately. You take out the barrier and they're up trying to spawn. So we got a picture of adult bull trout here, a couple shots of kokanee, and a pair of bull trout down here. All right, so big fixes. This is kind of the focus of this one. This is a big lift for everybody in the bull trout recovery world. This is where we build a temporary channel to facilitate fish passage. Here's Box Canyon Creek. This picture is from 2023. And you can see the section right here is completely dry for about 70 feet, where there's zero water whatsoever. And then on the tail end, downstream, not very much water depth. And then up here, same thing. You're looking at maybe 1 inch or 2 of water and much warmer and not good for fish at all. Matter of fact, when we were defishing this area, we hardly found any fish from about here down to that dry spot, just because there was no food. It was too warm. Not good place for those fish to be hanging out. So going on with the big fix, Just want to show again how fast this stuff happens. This is again from 2023. We were out the week of August 21st, the very next week on August 29th. Full fish passage barrier. The stream was completely disconnected from the reservoir. You see the red arrows here pointing to the same landmark in the picture. You can see how dramatic that is of a change. And here you can see again, I was mentioning they've released thousands of CFS per day. On the 22nd of August, they're releasing over 1,300 CFS. So that's a river's worth of water every day that is getting dumped out of these reservoirs for irrigation. Here's a picture of the flume once it was installed. You can see Cochise Reservoir at the top of the picture. And as you move down, the flume, this was again from 2023. We had to build it in 2 sections because there was some lake effect backwater coming up here. This allowed us, though, for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to put pit tag antennas or fish tracking devices in here. So we'll tag some of these fish and have devices that will actually pick up which fish, so we know exactly which ones try to go upstream and utilize it. In 2023, we had 5 detections and 9 reds that made it up. Additionally, on top of this, this is a little bit, it's difficult to get out here and do this work. You never know when the fall rains are going to come. The fish are waiting to spawn, and we don't know what the river is going to do. So we try to build it in a way that we can modify it as needed, and then also put these channel training barbs to make sure the river kind of stays where we want it to, so the fish can migrate. On top of building the flume, we lay straw bales end to end, about 4 to 5 feet apart. We use T-posts driven through the plastic, as well as rocks to hold them in place. And then inside of the flume, we build small rock structures that act as cover and flow breakup, so the fish can aren't just in essentially a jet stream of water shooting down this thing. And then I'm going to just show a quick video because it's better than listening to me ramble on. So I'm going to play this video real quick.
While this plays, I will just say, installing these emergency passage flumes is a huge effort. You can see all the trucks, all the people helping, all the hay bales that need to be moved. And so Josh has to put this together on super short notice, right? So usually it's, okay, we know Box Canyon Creek's going to dewater. We have 2 weeks to plan and execute an emergency fish passage flume. So that being said, like, he's always looking for more help. And if you ever have hands you want to contribute, this is a perfect way to get involved and help out. And then a few weeks later, they need to be taken out. So there's that part too.
Typically, the flume stays in through the spawn migration timing, or when the fall rains get there to allow volitional passage without the flume. So this year it was in for over a month. It was 6 weeks this year. And then, yeah, so thank you guys. I want to thank everybody that's on this list and more. I'm probably forgetting somebody or some group. I hope not. But all these groups pull together and help out with this. And it's a huge, huge lift. The first time that I was involved in building this flume in 2015, it was a pretty small group, and we lifted a lot of straw bales. And then because we've had to build it more and the attention to crabbing bull trout in the basin has grown, gotten a lot more people coming out to help, and it has been fantastic. I also need to thank really quickly Megan Ward, who's helped me out the last 3 field seasons, as well as Megan Ogburn, and then Jake helped out 1 year as well. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting Jake's name all of a sudden. Forgive me, but couldn't do it without everybody's help. We all pulled together. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does the tracking and tagging, so we know what's going on. This year, they were able to detect 20 distinct bull trout in Box Canyon Creek, 5 of which they detected in the flume. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Josh. I'm just going to wrap us up here with a slide about how you can help if you're interested in getting involved or things you can do on your own time. So one of those things is to be a responsible recreationist and, leave no trace. Josh said it before. If you're going to be out recreating in bull trout country or anywhere for that matter, take it take care of the land that you enjoy and you love. Don't build rock dams. If you do, take them out. Pick up your trash, pick up other people's trash. You can be really nice and kindly educate people who are not following the rules. Or of course, if you see or hear something, bull trout being poached or harvested where people fishing where they're not supposed to, just call someone, call WDFW law enforcement or Forest Service law enforcement. We have a really good relationship with those folks, and usually they're pretty on it when it comes to reports of violations. So if you don't want to engage with somebody, don't engage. But if they're just, if they're building a rock dam, it's really easy to be kind and just talk to them. And they're usually people don't really know the dangers, so they're very perceptive. You can volunteer with the Bull Trout Task Force. We, as a field crew, love to bring out new people with us, teach you what we're doing, bring you along. You can have fun. I'm actually going to have Merritt from our organization share a link in the chat. The link is to a sign-up sheet for volunteering with us. So if you're interested, feel free to click into that. Fill out the short form and we'll be in touch about how you can get out with us. And basically what that entails is you have to go to a 30-minute, 45-minute orientation where we talk about, safety, ethics, bull trout biology, that kind of stuff. And then I send you our fieldwork calendar. So pretty much everything that we do, you can come and do with us. It's super fun and engaging and rewarding. So I highly recommend any of you to come out with us if you're interested. And then, of course, know your fish ID. If you are an angler and you're fishing in the Yakima Basin, you may encounter bull trout, you may encounter brook trout, and you may encounter lake trout. And they all look pretty similar. So my final slide shows a comparison of a bull trout on the right and a brook trout on the left. And you can see how some people may be confused if they're not super familiar with these species. When you catch one, you might think it's a brook trout, which are invasive, non-native to our area. Most brook trout don't have any harvest limits. You can take as many as you want and you're encouraged to. But bull trout are protected and you must release them unharmed if you catch them unintentionally. So know your fish ID and spread the bull trout excitement. And yeah, other than that, we will take some questions.
First, we're going to do that awkward thing where we all clap for you over our cameras or with our little emojis. That was great, you guys. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. We have some questions in the chat that I'll start off with. And then if you have other questions that you want to, you could either raise your virtual hand or put them in the chat. The first thing I want to mention is that Andrew posted a link to a proposed bill that would make it easier for WDFW to enforce damage to stream beds from recreational dams or cars driving across stream beds. But thank you for that. I appreciate it. The next is Marcus pointed out that the training channels that we build by hand with rocks look a little similar to recreational dams, and was wondering how we're communicating what is there on purpose and what is making things harder.
Yeah, I'll let Josh answer the question, but at least for our Bull Trout Task Force crew who are trained to go look for these structures and remove them, we're aware of Josh's work and kind of where they're doing it. So, and like we can tell when it's, one of Josh's team's structures just by the way it's built. But to like an untrained eye or a recreationist who's just trying to do the right thing and like take out a rock dam, yeah, they may not know. But Josh, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, and that is a problem. In the past we've actually put signs up which tend to attract attention. Sometimes that attention is not wanted. Um, it's tricky. So we against the untrained eye, like Aimee said, it might look similar, but if you see anything that's completely crossing the entire stream, that's not a feature intended to help pass fish. You see them on the edges, blocking off small side channels or isolated pools or things like that. If it's not looking like a bridge or a full dam, it might be myself or my team's work to just try to facilitate fish passage. This is a constant battle on whether to post the signs, mark them, do whatever, because anytime we put signs up, people destroy them, tear them down, then it's litter. So it's a challenge. So we just work on education outreach, which is a huge point of pride that the Bull Trout Task Force is able to be out there and discussing with us on the weekends. I'm kind of lucky that I'm out there during the week and I don't run into a lot of people building these things. It's usually leftovers from the weekend. But yeah, it is a challenge, but we do communicate this stuff, and Aimee and I are working this summer about using the same program so that we can map these things and just have it a little bit more detailed. But yeah, we get it figured out between us. But yeah, it is a little bit of an issue. Great question.
Yeah, thanks. And then Cindy Kubel Smith had a question in the chat, and I didn't get a chance to introduce Cindy at the beginning, but she is one of the directors of Mid-Columbia Fisheries. So thanks for being here, Cindy. We appreciate it. And she asked, how is the success of the emergency flume evaluated?
That one's easy. If fish make it up to spawn or not. We conduct red surveys at all of these streams. This year in particular, we actually had a snorkel survey the day before we built it, and 0 adult bull trout were observed. We built the flume. Another survey was done 2 days later, and adult bull trout were observed, where there was no fish passage. So that's a quick sign. Additionally, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, along with Yakima Nation, have been pit tagging bull trout as a result of the fish rescues we do. And we have pit tag arrays or a technology that will capture those fish as they migrate upstream. We have multiple arrays so we can tell how far up they go, if they come back down. So that's how we're evaluating it. Like I said, this year, 20 unique fish were identified going up Box Canyon Creek, and 5 of which were detected within the flume. And these things have limited detection range, so they're not perfect by any stretch. But the minimum number of fish that we're actually able to tag, and the fact that we're detecting that many is a huge sign that this stuff is working. And also, when you have a 70-foot section of stream that is completely bare dry, and then you're able to water it up, it's a fairly good indicator that fish are then able to move.
Thanks. And I think Andrew asked if he could ask a question directly.
Yep.
Oh, well, I had just, well, one, I wanted to point out that we needed to be unmuted, but secondly, I'm with Trout Unlimited, and I know that this sounds like a great volunteer opportunity. Is there a good way for us to be aware when you need those volunteers to sign up for the flume work? Is it an email from WDFW or from Mid-Columbia, or how's the best way to know that that's about to happen?
I could actually, the easiest way to do it, if you send me your email address, I can include you on the weekly reports. You can actually see them and see the conditions as they change. It happens really quick, and we don't have we're at mercy of when we can get straw bales, when we can get enough staff. It happens. It's fast and furious, and more the help, the merrier. But it's tough for me to track down people. I send out a blast to that blast email to that group and saying, hey, we're doing it, please help. So that would be the best way. Just shoot me an email. I think my contact stuff is we'll make sure that we can post it and get it there. And I'd be happy if you're interested to include you on the weekly reports. There are lots of pretty pictures, not a whole lot of scientific mumbo jumbo. We just try to document what's going on with fish passage and how we're fixing it.
Yeah, if someone could put that email in the chat or something, that would be great.
I'll drop it in there right now.
Okay, and then Jeff asked a short short, a question without a lot of words, but a very complicated reply. So I think, Jeff, you probably know that we can't fully answer this one today, but I'll bring it up because it's extremely important and good for us to be thinking, which was, why don't the authorities who regulate the dams stop irrigation when the reservoir is so low that streams become disconnected?
I'll take a stab at it here. This gets into a very complicated thing. If you really are interested in digging into it, read Cadillac Desert. It's a great book from the 60s that kind of explain water in the West. But essentially, water is a property issue. Folks have a property right to divert that water. So the authorities have a legal requirement to provide that water to the irrigators that own it. So that's the short answer. The rest of the stuff is trying to mitigate it, and we do have biological opinions and other guidance to help minimize the impacts to fish regarding reservoir operations, such as the Bureau of Reclamation paying WFW to conduct this fish passage monitoring and remediation program. I think that I better just leave it right there.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. That's a tough one.
And a
Of
good
course we want, yeah, of course we want water for fish, but people have their water rights too. So
Yeah, and it is a property right issue, and like Aimee said, it's 75% of the state hops. The last time I looked, it's almost half of the world hops, beef, cattle, apples. I mean, it's farm to table, right? So it's more complicated than just watching out for the fish and trying to be respectful of those divergent needs, and all of us working together to try to minimize the impact, but still servicing the agricultural and municipal water needs.
Thank you. Then Andrew, do you want to ask your question out loud, Andrew? Oh, I'd have to unmute you again. This is tricky.
I was just curious whether you've ever used eDNA in the water in the basin to sort of track where the bull trout are and are not.
yeah, great question. I'll take that one. This year we actually went on an intense eDNA mission in the Upper Cle Elum watershed. You'll notice on my map earlier that I mentioned that bull trout in the Upper Cle Elum are locally extirpated or locally extinct. And part of the results from our eDNA from this year were showing we had 0 positive detections for bull trout. And we took about 90 eDNA samples at half-kilometer intervals over a 7-day period in the late August. And so this area was actually sampled back in 2017 by Mid-Columbia Fisheries as well. There were a couple really interesting, like low concentration positives. And from that work, we were recommended to resample eDNA because those low concentration positives that we got last time could have been a result of contamination. They could be, an angler's up there wearing the same boots that they were fishing with in, a bull trout water the day before. It could be bird poop. It could be just a lot of different potential sources of contamination, including the crew collecting the DNA. So if they were working in bull trout water and their gear didn't get completely decontaminated, that could have had an impact. It could also mean there were a few stragglers, a few bull trout still existing up in those areas, just not in high enough numbers to produce a confident result. And so we resampled this year with the intention of getting to the bottom of it. And yeah, none of the eDNA samples we collected came back positive. So that's a pretty good indication that there are no bull trout in the Upper Cle Elum watershed. And that's, in the Waptis Lake, Cooper Lake, upper parts of that drainage up there.
And that brings us to 8 o'clock. I appreciate the good slate of questions. We managed to touch on really the perfect range of things in those questions. So thank you. I appreciate it. I want to thank Josh and Aimee one more time. Really appreciate the preparation you put into this, and your presentations were clear and interesting and engaging, and hopefully have galvanized folks to come volunteer with the bull trout work this summer. And for folks who are watching on YouTube, please just go to midcolumbiafisheries.org to find our contact info, and we can get you signed up as a volunteer as well. So thank you. Good night, and spread that bull trout stoke.
Thank you,
everyone.
Becca. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Aimee. Thanks, Becca.
Hey, Amy and Becca, can you hang out just for 2 seconds?